Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving business professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And today we're going to have so much fun because once again, we're talking with someone halfway around the world. I love it when we get to do that. But more importantly, we're talking about something that is so near and dear to my heart, and that's podcasting. And so please join me in welcoming Kelly Glover to our program today. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Deb. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so excited to chat all things podcasts.
I know it's going to be so much fun. And as my longtime listeners can tell, I'm still got this crud going on with my nose, but that's okay. You know, we just have so much fun chatting anyway. So let me tell people a little bit about you, and then we will jump into this. So Kelly Glover specializes in booking podcast tours for entrepreneurs and authors. She started podcasting in 2007 and has an 18-year track record working in media and talent management. She hosted her own syndicated radio show, worked as a talent agent, celebrity interviewer, and has produced award-winning podcasts. Kelly is the founder of The Talent Squad and is here to teach the benefits of podcast guesting strategy and how you can get not only ready to pitch and get booked on these shows, but how to actually ace your interview. So again, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you, Deb. I'm so happy for you to ask me all the questions. What are your FAQs? Tell me everything.
Well, first of all, how'd you start doing this? You know, what made this become your passion?
Yeah, so I've been in media for about 18 years. I actually went to college in Ohio. You might recognize from the sound of my voice, I am Australian.
You've got a very Ohio accent.
But I went to college in Ohio. I'm a Bobcat. And I did internships in Hollywood, though. So I knew I always wanted to be in entertainment and media. Started out in the film companies in Miramax, was an entertainment reporter, and ended up getting into talent agencies and eventually into radio. So I was a radio host.
Great.
And moved back to Los Angeles and quickly discovered with this accent couldn't get a job on air.
Right.
And podcasting had been in for a while. I'd been podcasting since 2007 and started writing show notes, guest booking, moved on to producing, and then I opened up my own agency. Cool. So it's sort of been an evolution because when I started, Facebook wasn't invented. No one had a mobile phone. Podcasts weren't invented.
Right.
So it's all sort of, it's been exciting to see the beginning of podcasting and then how quickly it's advanced even just in the last 2 years while I've been working full time.
It's a phenomenal growth curve. And why do you think that is? Why do you think podcasting has become so popular?
Because your phone. You can do it anywhere, anytime, and you can do something else. So, and I think people are, I look at them as we're all little individual pods wandering around, but it's a way to be by yourself and still be connected, which I think people want a lot of these days. And people want to learn things and be educated, but also be entertained.
Right.
So I think that podcasting seems it's just at the right time for everybody. And it can be anything, right? There's a podcast on escalators. If you've got an interest, there's a podcast for it.
Escalators?
Escalators. Trust me, it's true. There's a podcast on escalators. So it's a way for people to get niche programming because it used to be broadcast and you have to watch a show and, it's 7:00 on a Tuesday. I know we've got on-demand media now, but also I think it's given a platform to real people give their expertise, people we would never have heard from 10 years ago.
Right. Yeah, you know, I'm one of the old PR people who used to pitch stories to the media. So I was on the other side of what you were doing. And, you know, this was when we were in Denver. There were the 4 networks there. And, even it was always very difficult. Now, I worked for the American Cancer Society. So we had some pretty good topics, pretty good speakers, all sorts of things to pitch. And it was very difficult. And we were lucky if we got picked up and got a 2-minute interview, because there was clearly so much that they were having to put in on, other news, things like that. And so to me, that's part of the appeal of a podcast is you can pitch to thousands of people now. And there's anything from, I did an interview the other day on a 9-minute program to things like mine that are an hour long. And so you have such a wide variety.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head of, first of all, 2 minutes. Podcasts can be up to an hour, so you can go deeper and you're looking for that content rather than you happen to walk past the TV, the segment's on, it's 2 minutes, you've seen it or you haven't seen it. And podcasts are giving the microphone to people that would not have had that access. So with you talking about the company that you worked for, you were a PR department pitching that out and still couldn't get spots.
Right.
But now, and this is evergreen as well. So the benefits of podcasting, everyone has a platform, everybody has an outlet, and everyone's expertise is highlighted. So there's more breadth and depth than just the few people.
Right. And of course, when we were pitching something that was going to run on the news, it was, okay, everybody needs to watch at 2:53 p.m. Now we could record it on the VCR, because this is before DVRs. And, and of course there were services that would record it for you and the station would also. But, now because of this, we've got our phones and, we can listen anytime we want. And that's why I think one of the reasons is that podcasts have really taken off. I have so many people that tell me, oh, I listen to your program on my commute, when I'm working out, all these various things. And that's what I think is really one of the biggest appeals is it's totally on demand.
Yeah. I think if you think of like a social, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, any of the other mediums, you have to be looking at it and have your undivided attention, right? But with podcasting, you don't. You can do something else at the same time. And I think people view podcasting as well as an individual item. So with a post, you might read some of it. You might read some headlines. With the TV, you might watch a little bit of it.
Right.
But with a podcast, it's almost like a book where you hear people say, I'm in the middle of a podcast.
Right.
So they're listening to the full experience. You're in the middle of a book. You don't read a chapter of a book and leave it.
Right.
You read the whole book. So when they start an hour-long podcast, they consume, the stat is 86% of listeners listen to all or most of the podcast.
Wow.
And if that's 30 to 60 minutes, that is a lot of content and they're focused solely on news. So I think it really is a beneficial medium. Plus, you can read a post, but you can't get someone's personality. You can't get their excitement. You can't get their intonation. So it actually, for small business owners, expedites the know, like, and trust factor because and it's about gut feeling a lot of time. You're like, I like that person. Great. I don't like that person. Great. Either way, you're right. And it's going to help separate your audience and if you want to hear more or not.
Right.
Plus, it, of course, not to mention the expert status. It instantly raises you to expert status, helps you get exposure.
Right.
And talking about everyone having an outlet, everyone also has a personal brand. You're either creating your personal brand these days or it's getting created for you. Doesn't matter. You don't choose to have one.
Right. No, you have one.
So I think that it's expert status, it's personal branding, and also something that's overlooked in podcasting, which is hugely important, is the relationship.
Right.
So if you, and that's the relationship between, there's a few happening actually. It's between the audience and the host, audience and the guest and the host. So if you are guesting on podcasts, sometimes the most beneficial relationship can be with the host.
Right. Oh, definitely.
Rather than with the audience, because if you're often, as you would know yourself, Deb, podcast hosts are business owners themselves. It's not their main thing that they're earning money from. It's in addition to what they're doing. So that's where all the referrals come in, cross promotion comes in, partnership comes in. Even the host could be a client. You could be a client of theirs. So I just could go on and on and on and on, as you can tell, and I already am, about there's so much to podcasting. It's not just a chat. It really isn't.
Right. And it's funny because we are recording this on video, and people can watch it on YouTube. We do have a channel for that. But I'll be honest, that's not a huge number. And I
Yeah.
think it is because it is an hour. It's exactly like you said on some of the other things. You and are very entertaining. But for somebody to sit and watch us for the whole hour,
Yeah.
we're not quite that entertaining. Now, they can, of course, just be listening to us. I mean, it's just like having the TV on all the time. But, for me, adding the YouTube channel is simply, it is fun to be able to see my guests. It's fun for people who are watching to be able to see me and see my guests. But of course, there is that little thing called SEO and the fact that Google owns YouTube. So it just kind of made sense to go there. But, the main target is not for people who are going to watch this. It is for people who are going to listen to it as a podcast.
Yeah, and I always reverse engineer things and think, how do I consume? How does my sister?
Right.
How does my mum? How
Mhm.
does my dad? How do people that I know consume media?
Mhm.
And you're right with Google and with YouTube and SEO,
Mhm.
main point. But if someone's watching a video and I was to watch a video of a podcast, I'm going in because I'm nosy and I want to see what they look like.
Right.
And I'll look at a few minutes of them
Mhm.
talking,
Mhm.
and then I'll probably have it in the background and
Right.
listen to it. And I
Right.
think that is probably how most people would
Mhm.
consume video in
Right.
that way.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, it's a podcast with pictures as
Mhm.
opposed to video that you can listen to,
Mhm.
in
Right.
my opinion.
And there's certainly
There's
a
nothing wrong
lot of
with it.
people who've done that with their podcasts. They don't have video at all. They just have the audio and then they have some type of image or something like that. Partially because I did one of these. I got interviewed earlier this week. That's always fun. And she said, she never got the video to work right. So she decided that she wouldn't do that. And so she has it. She just has a screenshot of, her guest and things like that. I think it's exactly as you said. We look at it for a couple seconds. We think, oh, look. And then we go on about our business and it's in the background talking to us just like it would be a regular podcast.
Yeah, I agree. And YouTube is the second biggest search engine. So to have it up there, so when
Mhm.
you do those keyword search, I think it's smart. I
Right.
absolutely recommend that. So
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah, and it's fun. Yeah, it's just for me, it's fun to actually be able to see my guest because it's like we're sitting and having a virtual cup of tea.
We are. Well, I'm having a coffee.
Yeah,
But
I have
yes.
tea. I have tea to try and convince my throat to keep working. Um, but yeah, it is fun to be able to see. But for many people, what we want to talk about today is the fact that mm, they should be considering as part of their marketing being a guest on podcasts. And of course there's so many people that say, ugh, I don't have anything people would want to hear about. I don't have any, I sound funny. Well, of course, I really sound funny right now, but, I don't have the equipment. Now, granted, you and I have different equipment that costs a little bit more, but even at that, it's not expensive equipment. And so that's one of the things, because I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks that people tell me is, oh, it costs too much. Nah, Blue microphone here was under $100. I've got an earpiece. You've got a headset. The whole setup is less than a couple $100. And, but so that's kind of one of those things that can just go away. Okay, stop saying you can't do this because it's pretty easy. But tell us, why, because this is what you do. When business owners come to you and say, hey, Kelly, I might have something somebody wants to hear about. Take us through the whole process.
Yeah. So up front, Deb, yes, you can get set up for $100 to $150. So my setup is an ATR 2100,
Mm-hmm.
which along with the Blue is the most common that you can get. I think right now that microphone is about $70.
Mm-hmm.
Just Google it and you can come across any number of retailers and
Mm-hmm.
get it delivered to your door within 24 hours. Then I've got a few little accessories on here. One is a shock mount.
Mm-hmm.
I think
that's this part on mine. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about $12.
Mm-hmm.
The stand is about less than $20 and the pop cover is, I remember, $2.99, $3.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
And
$100
this.
setup.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the headphones. I've got these headphones because I'm a former radio announcer.
Mm-hmm.
This is my comfort factor. I like them,
Mm-hmm.
but whatever works.
Right.
So this setup, and this is just a USB mic. You can
Mm-hmm.
get fancy ones with mixers, with
Mm-hmm.
boom arms, whatever. But I still, for the
Yeah.
at home, for the,
Yeah.
if you're watching this on video,
Yep.
it's just that I sit on my desk,
Mm-hmm.
and when I travel, which I'm to, Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
New York,
Mm-hmm.
and Sydney, I pop it in my suitcase.
Yep.
I take it with me. I plug it in, and I'm good to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you are investing in this, all you need is $100.
Mm-hmm.
Done. Job done.
Yep.
And then I would always say go camera ready as well. So just invest in yourself. That's not
Yes.
monetary
Mm-hmm.
value. And do you have something interesting to say? Yes. Yes, you do.
Mm-hmm.
Even for me, I think everybody knows all this. It's so obvious. But what's obvious to you is not obvious to everybody
Right.
else. And do a little self-audit at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask yourself some of these questions, which is what we ask our clients at the Talent Squad. What is no one else talking about but should be? That's the white space.
Mm-hmm.
What are the FAQs? If there's something that people ask you all the time,
Mm-hmm.
that gives you an indication of what they don't know, what they think that you're an expert in, and what
Mm-hmm.
you can actually answer.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might say, I get asked this all the time, and to you it's nothing.
Right.
But that's something that people don't know.
Right.
So,
They wouldn't ask you if they.
so up front, it's who do you want to talk to?
Mm-hmm.
What do they want to know? And what do you want them to do as a
Mm-hmm.
result of hearing you on a podcast?
Mm-hmm.
So there's 3 phases. There's the prep phase, like
Mm-hmm.
the figuring out what you want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So it's your messaging, your talking points,
Mm-hmm.
your soundbite, figuring out the audience, which is what we just said.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need some assets before you pitch those. So
Mm-hmm.
you need your one sheet,
Mm-hmm.
you need your online press kit,
Mm-hmm.
and again, the self-audit of, okay, if I'm a producer and I get the pitch, this is even before you write your pitch,
Mm-hmm.
What's your website look like? What's your social look like?
Mm-hmm.
What do your headshots look like? Is your messaging consistent across the
Mm-hmm.
platforms? So you're going to get cross-check and verified. So you need to make sure that that's ready, which will take time,
Mm-hmm.
but you can just do, if it's not an urgent thing, you can go, okay, well, this week I'm looking at socials, and just
Right.
go and do a tidy up of them and make sure it's consistent.
Which you should be doing anyway.
Yeah. So that's the prep side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the pitching, it's what shows, it's finding shows, vetting shows, and then with the pitch, so you need your subject line.
Mm-hmm.
You need the body of the pitch. That's when you attach the one sheet. That's when you attach the press kit. And then it's doing the interview. So
Mm-hmm.
I think people think, I want to be on shows. I need to find a show. I need to pitch a show. I need to do the show. But there's
Mm-hmm.
all the pre-work
Mm-hmm.
because podcast is competitive.
Right.
So you come from PR, Deb. All that I've just said is PR
Mm-hmm.
background.
PR 101. Yep. Mm-hmm.
PR 101 in podcasting. So the context and content is the same. It's just the medium.
Mm-hmm.
But you get pitched all the time for your show.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to hear from you what you're seeing with people pitching you, how frequently you get pitched, what you like, what you
Mm-hmm.
don't like, because you're a show that people will and should be pitching.
Well, thank you. So it has evolved over the years. And I believe your program 529 or 28.
Wow.
Yeah, so we've been doing this quite a long time. Originally, the program was a live interview format in a studio where my guest and I sat and looked at each other. And that it has evolved, as the years have evolved. But so our process has obviously evolved. And so what I look for when somebody pitches us is, first of all, did they even appear to go to the website for the program? And many times they haven't. So that's kind of a red flag. And we're actually, so as we're doing this program, it's mid-December, and we already have enough people who have pitched to us, and we do 2 programs a week, that we can fill the schedule through at least February, maybe March. So, I mean, that's a lot of people who have pitched to us. But yeah, I look for, do they even pay attention to the program, or is somebody just going through a list? Did they follow the procedure that we have? Because we've got a form that people fill out. Now, if I know them, I'm not going to make them fill out the form. But I want them to fill out the form, because that shows me, first of all, if they went to the website, But then it's going to show, because we ask for things like your subject matter, your talking points. So, now we don't ask how many other programs have you done or anything like that. And I have had a couple of people who we have been their very first podcast, which biting off an hour podcast for your very first time, kudos to them. That was, and we did fine, that was okay. But we ask for all of that up front, because first we want to make sure that they're a good fit. We don't turn down too many programs. It has to be something that is so clearly not in any way business related that we will turn them away. And I like to be able to give them somebody else, to pitch to, things like that. But even if it's something that doesn't seem like it might fit, we might look at it. Like we had someone who, you mentioned the relationship between the host and the guest. She has since become a friend. And she pitched to us that she wrote a book on in vitro fertilization. And I'm thinking, now, how is that? So we went back and I said, okay, this sounds very interesting, and so she said that she has quit her job, and this is now her business, is to promote this subject, and of course the book, but to talk to people. And so we talked about how she was a guest on the program. And so we talked about how she marketed the book, all the things that brought it back into being a business topic. But it is something that is very interesting is, first and foremost, did somebody even pay attention to what the program is and what the format is? I've had people who've said, oh, we'll only talk for 15 minutes. Okay, well, it's a 58-minute program. So sorry. But I think it goes to exactly what you were saying before. They need to have their ducks in a row before they ever contact me.
Yeah, I think, and that goes to part of the sourcing, vetting, and pitching.
Mm-hmm.
So it's both ways. So is the show suitable for you,
Mm-hmm.
but are you suitable for the show?
Right.
You'd be surprised how many people pitch shows that don't even have guests.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised how many men pitch shows
Mm-hmm.
that have only ever had women guests.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it comes with the growth of the industry. There were a few that started out being guest bookers,
Mm-hmm.
and then lots of virtual assistants do it where they just do copy and paste emails. Right. Hi, insert host name, really
Mm-hmm.
love, insert episode title. Here's
and
why I'm
sometimes
great.
they don't always do the right cut and paste, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. And so I always think if the answer is so what, who cares, then
Mm-hmm.
the answer you're going to get is next.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not about you in the pitch. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the audience. It's
Mm-hmm.
not even necessarily about the host.
Right.
So it's not like, hi, I want to come on your show and I'm great.
Mm-hmm.
It's, hi, Deb. I saw you talked about XYZ,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see that this could be beneficial to
Mm-hmm.
your audience, and here's what I'm able to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even about you. It's what
Right.
you're bringing and value you're bringing to the audience, that they
Mm-hmm.
can learn something and do something by the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because I think with podcasting, it is highly practical.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you're going to get entrepreneur stories and personal mm-hmm. stories in there, but people want, as well as inspiration, something that they can take away and mm-hmm. do and do in their own business and their own life at the end of the episode.
Right. And we do get pitched by quite a few people who have written a book. Yes. And I mean, that's kind of a standard thing. And especially now, that is one of the things is you write a book, you go on podcasts. It used to be you wrote a book, you went on radio programs and TV programs. Now, you add podcasts in there too. And I'm perfectly fine with that, again, if the book pertains. And I'm also fine with them selling on air. I mean, I want them to pitch their company. We'll have you talk later about services that you provide. But and I'm cool with that. But again, it has to be business related.
Yeah. So with authors, and we book authors and entrepreneurs, but books can't talk. Books mm-hmm. are a piece of paper. Books are not a person.
Right.
So what? The answer to that is, so what? Who cares? Mm-hmm. I want to come on your show and talk about a book. Great for you.
Yeah.
It's actually
the content.
It's the content of the book. What does the book teach the audience? Mm-hmm. And you are the author of the book. It's not mm-hmm. going on to speak about the book. Mm-hmm. And authors, we're very upfront. We call it, well, we don't call it. I heard this from some tech people in Silicon Valley. It's called bluff. Bottom line up front. Bottom line. So the bottom line mm-hmm. up front is nobody cares about the book.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
It's so and that's hard for authors to hear because they've spent years getting this book
Oh, yeah.
out, and hundreds, if not thousands of hours, and they just want people to read the book and buy the book, and I totally get that. But it's what in the book, the way that you talk about, sell it and explain it, and then people are really buying you as the author of the book,
Right.
not the book itself.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's the know, like, and trust factor of the author, speaking about the subject matter as far as the book goes. So don't go in with, I'm an author, I've written a book, I want to come on the show. Go in with, here's the problem your audience has, here's the solution, I want to come in. And by the way, I'm an expert because I've written a book about it.
Right.
So it's the same mission, repackaged in a different way.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting with authors because there are some that really are just the, and I can tell usually from the pitch, here's my book. And, and I'm going to talk about my book. I wrote this book. Okay. And then what's really funny is, before if I'm going to talk about it on the air, then they need to give me a copy of the book. That can be an e-version, so it doesn't cost them anything. I'm perfectly fine with that. But if I'm going to be discussing it, I will read it, and I read it. That is one of those things that I do, is if I'm going to talk to somebody about their book, I have read it. But it's about the content of the book. And I've had a couple of guests who have come on who have really gotten caught in in chapter 2.
No, no. Yeah, and with that, with our author clients, and you saying, yeah, we always send a hard copy of the book, but as a guest, don't expect that all the hosts will have read the book.
Right. It's actually pretty unusual.
You are the exception to the rule. That is not always the case. That's a gift. And I would be so excited if I'd written a book and you had read the whole thing. So that's something with talking about being prepared for the interview and doing the actual interview. How does an author handle it when the host hasn't read the book? And how do you go on and be a guest on the show without being a jerk and saying in chapter 12, page 23, paragraph 2, I speak about that, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because you have to buy the book. Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody. So it's being gracious and, how do you say, being an expert in talking about it without talking about it, and be someone that somebody wants to hang out with, right? And then they'll buy your book.
Well, and the same thing goes for, someone who is providing usually a service. They can't say, well, I'm only going to tell you part way through, otherwise, you have to hire me. And, it's like, no,
leave it all on the table, give everything away. It's the know, like, and trust factor. And if people like you, they will want to work with you.
Right.
So, and everyone has a different approach. Like, I'm bluff, bottom line up front. If you don't like that, then you're not going to like me. And that's fine, because we've gotten rid of each other out of their own. And I want to work with people that like me, and you want to work with people you like. So great.
Right. And it is about, you are on the program to promote something, but in a way it's just kind of a tease, which, and so maybe so you give away the best part, but then if somebody's like, wow, that sounds really cool, I have to buy the book to find out more, or I have to contact them to learn more. And those who are really good at doing that are the people who are very successful, because they are giving you enough information that even if you don't go to their website or do anything else, it was still beneficial. But maybe they gave you enough information to pique your interest then to work with them.
And if you think about, again, going back to reverse engineering and how we all buy things, I've bought those $1,200 courses, but I didn't buy them after hearing somebody once. I might have heard them on a podcast, and I might have gone to the website, and I probably went back to the website dozens of times. Then I would have seen them on Facebook. I would have seen them on Instagram. I would have watched a video. I would have listened to them on more. And then maybe a year later, I might buy the course. And that's not the usual timeline for everybody, but if it's a bigger, it's not $5. So sometimes it is a longer pipeline, and that needs to be expected. So for someone to buy something, they're not going to buy you. It's the first, I'm not going to marry you on the first date.
Right.
And that's exactly what it is. Or if you want to put in Gary Vaynerchuk terms, it's the jab, 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 right hook.
Yeah.
You need to give before you ask.
Right. Definitely. And it's funny, one of the things, when you were talking about, researching programs, the other thing is, your style, is it going to work with the program. I've even though this is a podcast, there are still language rules. When I upload my program to iTunes, I have to say whether it's clean or not. And it used to be even more, when I was with Mile High Radio, I mean, there were the words that could not be said. And there are people who just use salty language, shall we say. And now the cool thing is, there are podcasts where that's absolutely perfect. I mean, they're going to toss those words around, but you can't do it on my program. And I've only ever had, we only ever had one person who dropped the F-bomb. And that was like, oh, good heavens. And it was when we were still doing live, and so we couldn't beep it out. But it was like, and I had another one, and this was so funny. I had this guest, and he asked me, in the pre-chat. Now, I sometimes swear. I said, no. And I said, now, granted, this is recorded, and so I can, go in and I said, but, it's easy. And he said, just a minute. And I heard Russell, 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 giggle, giggle, giggle. And I'm thinking, what the heck? And he went and brought his 3-year-old daughter into the room, plunked her down on the floor, gave her a coloring book or something, because he never, ever swears in front of her. And so he did the whole program without saying anything. But, that is part of the research that you should be doing. If you're going to be a guest on somebody's program,
you have
listen to their program.
Dev, number one, listen to, you have no beeswax pitching a show that you've never listened to. Come on. And you also need to do your due diligence of the host. So look at all their platforms. What are they speaking about? You don't want to sound like a scientist if they're really casual. So you've got to adapt yourself while still being yourself to the show. You're a guest in someone's house. You have to play by their rules.
Right.
If you want to run your show, have your own show, and then you pick the guests to go on.
Right. And sometimes it means you're not going to be on that program. I had somebody pitch to me one time, wonderful woman. She wins awards for her PR campaigns, all sorts of things, but she cannot talk without swearing like a sailor. I mean, that's just not, but her clients are all extremely edgy, and I said, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. And she said, okay. But it was, so that is part of that whole due diligence is, are you a good fit with the host?
Absolutely. And you need to be adaptive. You still need to remain yourself. There's more than 700,000 podcasts. There's something for everyone. And as you would know in PR and with pitching, a no is as good as a yes, because you know where to move on, and not everything is going to be 100% hit. So you will quickly learn how many pitches that you send out, that your team sends out, that your VA sends out, that your agent sends out, whomever it is. You'll learn, you get a pitch rate. So, okay, I need to find X amount of shows. Out of those shows, this is how many that will be good enough to pitch. Out of those pitches, this is how many that are likely to go through. So it's sort of a conversion rate. And especially if you want consistency, because you might want to go on podcasts, but going on one a year isn't great. So if this is a proper strategy for you, you need to think, okay, well, in whatever year, I want to hit X amount of shows. So this is what I need to do to get that. But then, Deb, it's nailing the interview and also having everything set up after the interview. Because if you do an awesome interview, you still need to push that out. You need to tag the host. You need to make them into Instagram. You need to promote that. You need to put it in your setup so it gets pushed out of social media. Podcasts are evergreen. So you might record it, you might pitch it today, you might get booked in 2 weeks, it might not record for 2 months, it might not go live for 4 months, and then that's when you got to promote it, and someone might not listen to it for 2 years, and that's when you get the lead. So it is a long-term strategy.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when somebody mentions a program that ran several years ago. And part of that is because of how I have it set on the website. You can look by topic and things like that. But the thing that continually amazes me is when we've done the program, and then, it goes live on Monday or on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're very clear about all this. My producer provides all this information. And then there's crickets. They don't promote it, or I don't see it, which means they didn't tag us, and they're given all of this information. And so it's kind of like, well, why did you bother doing this if you're not going to tell anybody? Now they might not have, they might not have liked it, so hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, if you've gone to all this effort, you need to be promoting it yourself and pushing it everywhere you possibly can.
It's an opportunity to promote, leverage, and repurpose.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are you promoting the show that's self-contained that the host has done,
Mm-hmm.
often you can, if a transcript's done, you can turn that into quotes,
Mm-hmm.
or you can make your own transcript. There's lots of
Right.
software to
Mm-hmm.
do that
Mm-hmm.
these days. You can turn it into a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
You can get the link and put that link within your email. Hey, I was on a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing speeches or getting up in front of an audience, you can incorporate it into speeches that you do. When I was on X podcast with X host,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of ways that you can squeeze the juice out of
Mm-hmm.
one individual podcast episode. You can
Right.
do it behind the scenes. Hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
recording a podcast. Look for
Mm-hmm.
it soon. Just recorded a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the behind, there's a lot that you can do. And
Right.
it is your responsibility as a guest to
Mm-hmm.
promote that show.
Mm-hmm.
It's an unwritten rule, but you're more likely to get asked back and
Right.
get referrals from hosts saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Kelly Glover, she was a great guest,
Mm-hmm.
than if you just show up at the party, eat all the
Mm-hmm.
food and leave and
Right.
ghost without saying
Yeah,
goodbye.
because I'm like, wait a minute, you didn't even throw your dirty dishes away.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's not hard. I mean, even if somebody's not all that technology savvy, they can just share my post, things like that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, and that's what amazes me is when people don't do that. Now, again, they could be, and I just don't see it. But, it's kind of like, really?
Well, you should be seeing it because
Yes,
part of that
they should be
is
tagging.
the tagging,
Mm-hmm.
the hashtags,
Mm-hmm.
putting it across different social media.
Yep.
LinkedIn is getting a lot of traction right now.
Mm-hmm.
People are seeing the posts, so that's where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at mainly. Also, and all those other avenues as well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then, yeah, so it's shout outs to the host.
Right.
For sure.
Well, and what I really love is when it's months later, and clearly what they've done is they've used one of the variety of scheduling programs,
Yes.
and they've just gone in and done it so that, and it's dependent on how many interviews they've done. If they did 30 interviews in a month, well, that's an awful lot of content to keep pushing out at people. But if they did 1 or 2 interviews, then, they can start pushing those back out at people every month, every 6 weeks, every, whatever they think it is, and they schedule it and it's done. And so that works really well.
Yeah, another way to leverage podcast interviews and use them after you've done them as a host and a guest is when you have prospective clients or current clients
Mm-hmm.
and you spoke on something, you can direct them to the podcast and say,
Right.
you know what, I actually mentioned that in this podcast. Go to 3 minutes and 57 seconds
Mm-hmm.
and I speak on that.
Right.
So it's a way to let people know that you've been a guest on podcasts. And
Mhm.
also you can put that maybe in your frequently asked questions area or
Right.
your media page
Mhm.
and direct it to there.
Mhm.
And it's using language that you've already used in a way to promote an episode, but also you don't have to answer the frequently asked questions
Right.
that you get asked all the time.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of ways that you can use podcasts and
Right.
also promote
Mhm.
in promoting them as well.
Mhm. Right. So Kelly, I'm guessing that the big thing is still that people say, I don't have anything that's interesting to talk about. Why would anybody even care to listen to me? So what do you tell those people? Because, we talked about it briefly before that people, they have something that somebody's going to care about. Now, maybe not an hour's worth, but, why should they go on podcasts? Maybe is what I'm trying to blurt out here.
Well, podcasts, people are coming to you, right?
Mhm.
So they are actively looking for what you are talking about. I am not going to listen to an escalator podcast,
Right.
even though I know it exists,
Mhm.
because I'm not looking for that.
Yeah, see,
So
I might listen to it now just to hear what the heck are they talking about for on an escalator podcast.
it's attracting people instead of chasing people.
Mhm.
It's engaging people instead
Mhm.
of selling to people.
Mhm.
It's quality over quantity,
Mhm.
and you're speaking the language of the audience.
Mhm.
So I would argue that if somebody is an expert, if they have a small business, they are already doing something and they just need to speak on that.
Right.
And talking before about what is everybody coming to you asking for your solution? What services do you offer? And everybody has a story.
Mhm.
Everybody has gone from A to B and had struggles along the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's never been a direct line. So what is relatable to your audience? Because where you are now, maybe your audience was there 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So they're struggling with how to get
Right.
there. And you have this, like with all this, everything that I'm speaking about has taken me years to learn. And the information that I'm giving you to me is simple and basic and obvious. But by me telling you all this, it's going to expedite and cut out 6 months, a year of you figuring it out yourself. So all the things that you have figured out in your business, in your expertise, going to cut off 1-2 years of somebody else figuring it out themselves.
Right.
So don't discount that. And the thing I would do is get that piece of paper out and what services do I offer? What blog posts do I have? What social media? What do people keep asking me? What have I failed at and learnt from? So you just have to do a little bit of an audit of that, and then that is your talking points. And what is nobody else talking about that should be? What have people been speaking on other podcasts already? Okay, so that may be covered. Do I have a different spin on that? What is the problem of the audience and what solutions do they need? And is what I'm offering a solution to that I can help them?
Right.
So there's a lot of, it's asking yourself questions and then looking at the answers and repackaging it into topics and talking points and all the things.
Well,
So.
and it might not be business. It might be personal. Maybe you're talking about how to be a volunteer or, all sorts of things. I mean, and I think that's the thing that we want people to think about is you're interesting. Somewhere there is something that is interesting about you and somebody else will be interested in it.
Absolutely. So I have a client who is an accountant and you might think, accountant, so what, this millions of them. That's true. She's amazing. And speaking about relationships, she called me to book her on podcast. By the end of that session, I had hired her to be my accountant, right? So speaking about relationships, it's the opposite. I bought from her and she was contacting me for business. Now, the interesting thing about that is she knows her stuff. I know she knows her stuff.
Right.
But she was married. Her husband, she got a divorce. Her husband left her $50,000 in debt from a gambling debt. So she was in debt. She had credit card debt and she had to come out of that. So that's her story because as an accountant, no accountant says, yeah, I was in debt and I had to come out of it and figure it out myself and I have credit card bills. But that makes her relatable because she did it and she did it herself. And she leveraged all the systems in America for, the 0% interest. So if I'm something you may not know about me is that I was more than 300 pounds and I've lost 200 pounds, right?
Wow, you lost a person.
Yes. So when I go to a dietitian or when I went to one, I don't want to go to someone who's never been fat in their life because I've been fat for 40 years.
Because they can't relate.
No. So with an accountant, the fact that she had been $50,000 in debt and had gotten out of that and leveraged the system and figured it out, I want her. Because she's done it. She's not some perfect person that looks down on other people. And what I'm saying is, yeah, she's accountant. She's got accountant skills, but that's her story.
Right.
And her story is why I want to work with her, not because she's an awesome accountant, because that's just standard. Yeah, I expect you to be a CPA.
Yeah.
Standard.
Right. Yeah, that comes back to that know, like, trust.
Yeah. So, and that's where the personal story comes in of business along with your expertise and so I absolutely agree with you. It's not just for business people. Again, escalators. Always come back to the escalator podcast.
I really am going to have to look that up. And when you're pitching, excuse me, it's okay to put that personal in there also, to say, I am an accountant that ended up $50,000 in debt and I'm going to talk to your listeners about how I got out of debt. Now, never, ever lie. No, do not ever. No. But, and as a host, I'm going to do, you researching me, I'm going to research you or my producer will. And, and so I'm going to look into this a little bit and see, okay, is this really what's going on? But, it's about making that pitch personal. When I can tell that it's been a cut and paste, I don't like that. And now I understand, especially, a lot of times people are just going through, but add one sentence, even if it's just, I saw that you had a similar guest on your program in December. Okay. you're not even saying you listened to the program. You just saw that it was a similar guest. That's the way to bring that back in. But yeah, it's okay to put that personal information in that pitch.
I would say it's crucial because
Mm-hmm.
podcasts are raw and personal, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why people are listening to them for extended
Right.
periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
If we want some shiny, glossy thing, we'll look at Instagram or
Mm-hmm.
we'll listen to a 3-minute segment
Mm-hmm.
on the Today Show that's self-contained. But I kind of want to know all the other things,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm nosy and I want to hear the real stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
I do want to relate to you, and I
Right.
do want something that I can go at the end of and
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the episode and
Mm-hmm.
put into practice.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody may Deb, you've done more than 500 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are someone has probably covered what you're already talking about.
Once or
So
twice. Mm-hmm.
what is an angle
Mm-hmm.
that you can add on to that and say, I saw Barbara talk about tax in episode 273, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to talk about that
Mm-hmm.
with this and add
Right.
on to that.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're offering the host is an opportunity for them in that episode to call back to episode
Mm-hmm.
273 and in the back catalog, and then you're helping them promote that
Mm-hmm.
as well. So you're
Right.
looking for opportunities. It's not just, hi, you've got a podcast, I've got a book, I want to be on
Mm-hmm.
your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Who
Right.
cares? So what? You're
Mm-hmm.
looking for all the other things, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a full strategy, and the benefits are
Mm-hmm.
amazing.
Right. And to me, and I mentioned this at the very start, being on podcasts should be part of your marketing. And
Yes.
so that comes back to exactly what you were saying with the messaging, all of those things. If I'm talking here and then somebody goes to my website and it's totally different, well, that's confusing. And so, that now there might be very valid reasons why it could be different. I have the Business Power Hour and I have Deb Creer and I have several other things, but I do have them where they all tie together. So it makes sense. But, it really should be part of your marketing. And, it might not be that it's the CEO of the organization. Maybe it's, but it shouldn't be the salesperson.
Mm.
But, I want to hear from the CEO. I want to hear from the person who started that business from the ground up. Now, have I interviewed people who are, employees? Sure. But that's been more when they have had something very specific that they've been able to talk about. But yeah, for the most part, you're talking to the leader of the organization.
Yeah, and we call it at the Talent Squad the speaking gig you can do without leaving the house,
Mm-hmm.
because it really is.
Right.
So with podcasts, people would travel to get in a room with 500 people that
Mm-hmm.
are their ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as they hear a podcast has 500 downloads,
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh no, too small. I only want to be on the Tim
Mm-hmm.
Ferriss show. Well, if you were looking back at 500 sets of eyes that were listening directly to
Right.
you, you would
Mm-hmm.
travel across the country,
Mm-hmm.
get that Uber, get that plane, get that ticket,
Right.
get that hotel room, pay for those meals.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like I'm going on because I can, because it takes a long
Mm-hmm.
time to even just get through airport security.
Oh,
So for you to
this is a
get
heck of
that,
a lot easier.
yeah. So for you to go to your office and or home office,
Mm-hmm.
put the headphones on for that $100 setup,
Mm-hmm.
go down and do that interview. It's not people that have to
Mm-hmm.
be there at 11 o'clock on a
Right.
Tuesday for that conference in
Mm-hmm.
Columbus, Ohio. Anyone can listen anytime in the
Mm-hmm.
world and in 2 years.
Right.
So it's basically like you standing in that room
Mm-hmm.
and people just coming in whenever
Mm-hmm.
they want and listening to you.
Right.
So I think that benefit is
Mm-hmm.
huge. And I think CEOs and higher up people do have the benefit, and the story is you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're a CPA, you've got the credibility markers of CPA, you've done the
Mm-hmm.
degree, you've done the business, you've got all the things, but we also want to hear the
Mm-hmm.
personal.
Right. Well, and that's why, I usually start, every once in a while I forget, but, I will start my interviews with, tell me how you got here. Because to me, that's one of the coolest things. And that's where I've learned some really cool things about some of my guests. And, sometimes they've said, well, I've never told somebody that. But yeah, I want to know how you got from, wherever to what you're doing now, because to me, that comes back to that know, like, trust. And sure, I want to know that they went to X college and they've got X degree and, certification and whatever. But it's like, how did you decide that you were going to start your own company? Or, you go back and forth between 2 continents with yours. I mean, to me, that's the cool part.
Yeah, and it comes down to interview prep that we're speaking
Mm-hmm.
about. So the prep and positioning, the pitching, the interview,
Mm-hmm.
and then the promoting.
Mm-hmm.
So in the prep, you need to know that story.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people say, how can I do media? How can I do interviews? I'm an introvert. Well, podcasting is the best media you can do for introverts,
Right.
because you're doing it from your own home,
Mm-hmm.
on your own schedule, to one person.
Mm-hmm.
No one's looking at you.
Right.
And then
It's
recorded.
very unintimidating, I hope.
Yes. So it is the perfect thing for introverts, and often they'll get edited. Usually they're live to tape. So you need to go into it as if they would never will be, they never will be edited. But I think that you need to have that prep of, make sure you know your messaging. And at the Talent Squad, what we say to our clients is practice in private before you go public. There's no excuses these days not to be ready. It doesn't mean you have to sound like a robot and rehearsed. It just means that you've practiced it enough to be confident that when you get asked that question, Deb, which is pretty much the number one obvious question that you need to be prepared on, know your story, you've got it. Now, whether that's pressing record on your laptop for 3 minutes a day and just ask yourself a question and answering it, or getting a member of your team, getting a VA, hiring a TaskRabbit, whatever it is, to ask you questions so you get used to it. So by the time that you go on that hour show, you already know the answers to your own question, and you're not nervous to answer it because you've done it a million times, and you can go this way, go that way, and you got your story straight.
Right.
And even if you have a little Bible in some file on your Google Drive of, these are my points of my journey, my question, you've got an arsenal to pick from. And you can go any way you want and cater it to the host, to the audience that we were speaking about before.
Right.
So it's not hard, but it is a strategy, and it is time consuming, but it's worth it, and it will pay off.
Right. Right. And you do need to be prepared for the unexpected question. Now, I'm not somebody who is going to deliberately try to trip someone up. To me, that's not a good interview. But, sometimes there will be a question that comes from left field, and you're thinking, where'd that come from? And sometimes before a program, I will say, is it okay if I ask you X? Especially the people that I'm interviewing who are attorneys, who are financial people, who may have some guidelines as to what they can and cannot say. But, there are times where you get asked a question and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? So you need to be able to respond to those also.
Yes, it's also, and those are the skills, the interview skills that I think people overlook and think, I'm good talking. I know how to answer questions, but you need to have a little pre-prep in place for if I get asked a question that I don't like, and then know how to reframe it. So you can be like, yes, that's an excellent question. I'd love to focus on the top 3 things. So give them something else. So sometimes, or if the interviewer isn't as skilled as you and they're not asking the questions that you want to ask to get your
how to wedge it back in.
Yeah, you need to reframe and make sure you get your talking points in there, because you are there for a reason. You are a guest, but still, if they're going this way and where you want to go is this way, you may need to ask and answer your own question, which is a skill unto itself.
Right.
Especially if they haven't read the book, especially if they haven't done their due diligence. You have, but if they haven't.
Well, and, and I try to get as many of their talking points and things like that in there as possible, but it doesn't always happen. And I've talked about this before. I interviewed somebody one time who came in, and this was when we were still face-to-face in interviews. And she had her 7 things of, I was to ask her this and this and this and this. And I did 1 and I did 2. And then the conversation took us to like number 7. I mean, it was just, and she went, and I'm like, it's okay. We'll get to all of them, and so I don't always get to everybody's things, but that is where it's good to have that skill to bring that back if it's something you really want to make sure that gets in there. Now, you might be perfectly happy with not having talked about it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's just it's being prepared, because then you can be relaxed and truly get into the interview knowing, you know what, I've got these things if I need them. I know how to answer them if I need them. Goes wrong, I know how to answer that, and you'll never be worried about an interview again. So it's just having those skills, practicing, having the techniques, having them written down if you're worried about it. So for me, even when I do an interview, I'll just have a little Google Doc in front of me, because even though you can tell I can speak till the cows come home, I still like having something there in case there's a moment when I just forget that I can go through, I can reposition myself and then keep going with that interview.
Right. We have times when we
Yeah.
don't remember our own name.
Oh, absolutely. And I will always have the host name in front of me
Mhm,
just in case I have a blank.
mhm.
So,
Right.
and then do I need to use it? No, I
Mhm.
don't. Do I need to use my sheet? Not really,
Right.
but it makes me feel
Mhm,
comfortable knowing
mhm,
it's there. And that comfort is going to
mhm.
mean I can give you everything that I've got, Deb.
Right. And you've done probably hundreds, if not thousands, of interviews. So the fact that you still kind of have that little comfort thing there, I think is something that's encouraging to people who are thinking, oh, it's like, no, it's okay. Because we get sidetracked. We have, bad days. We have whatever. And it's nice just to have that little thing there. I always have, my documents that
Yeah.
have all that information. One of the things that I, as a host, ask for is the correct pronunciation of somebody's name. I don't want to
Yes.
interview somebody and have been saying their name wrong the whole time. Now, do I, yeah, and I still get stuck on names. That's just one of those bugaboos. But, that's just kind of one of those things where I as the host, want to make sure I have that correct.
Absolutely. And if you're a guest on a show, the inverse goes as well.
Hmm.
So because I might have pitched a show, gotten on a show, seen the name, and then with the accent, sometimes like
Right. Hmm.
Tara, it's the
Hmm.
pronunciation, but
Hmm.
I will make sure I go back and listen to the show to
Hmm.
make sure I pronounce it in the
Right.
correct way.
Right.
So it's a host's name as well.
Right. And of course, one of the nice things about some of the technology, like here on Skype, or not Skype, Zoom that we're using, it has their name. Now, it doesn't always. I interviewed somebody the other day and their account was their corporate account. So the
Yeah.
name wasn't there. And
Yeah.
so, I have two big monitors in front of me that I'm gesturing at for those who are, and so I have a lot of stuff that's on my monitors in front of me that I can look back and forth at. And I'll tell you, it's taken practice once we started doing video to not be going, okay, I'm going to look over here. Okay, I'm going to look over here, to
Yeah.
just very subtly be able to move my eyes and look at those things.
And still stay on mic and give
Mhm.
good sound.
Right, right.
You're right. I forgot about that Zoom element, and I will always still write the name on the sheet.
Hmm.
It just goes back
Oh,
to my
yeah.
radio
Hmm.
days. I will always write it on
Hmm.
there because if you're doing things and pressing a million
Hmm.
buttons, sometimes you can forget the name of the
Right.
person who you're
Oh,
speaking
yeah.
to.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
happens for
Yep.
everybody.
Yeah. Kelly,
Are you
it's been
okay,
an
Deb? I'm
hour.
sorry.
It's been an hour. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And look, I still have a voice. This is really fun.
You're a
Um,
pro.
but the what I really want now is, so we've wetted people's whistles. They're thinking, ooh, this is something that I can do, but they really don't know how to go about it themselves. And so they're going to contact the Talent Squad. So tell us more about the Talent Squad and what you guys do.
Yeah, so we are a podcast guest booking agency and we book podcast tours for entrepreneurs and authors.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are just starting out and would like to be on podcasts, the usual ways people do it is they hire an agency like us to
Mm-hmm.
outsource and do all the legwork. And if you want to do a tour, that's a great place to start. The other way is if you have someone in your team and you want them to do it,
Mm-hmm.
or a virtual assistant, or do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
They're the few options.
Right.
So I don't want to be like, we're the only way for you to do it. It's not. You can do it
Mm-hmm.
yourself and you've got lots of tips.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do want to start with outsource an agency and leverage that, it's thetalentsquad.com.
Right.
But just get started
Mm-hmm.
and get started practicing and start looking at things, because if you are not getting yourself booked or getting an agency booking you on podcasts, your competitor is, and now is the time
Right.
to at least get that microphone,
Mm-hmm.
get that practice.
Mm-hmm.
What are your talking points?
Mm-hmm.
So please get started, because like we said, you are a personal brand.
Mm-hmm.
You don't brand yourself, someone else will brand you. So take control of your brand and your message. I'm a big believer in that, Deb.
Right. And we all have our stories. It seems a lot of times with a business owner, a CEO or whatever, we get caught up in we're the head of that business and we're that business. That's not what we want to hear. We want to hear about the personal story. And, then you get the little business in there, but it's that story. And that's, and I think, to bring it first full circle, that really is, I think, what appeals about podcasts. It's not okay, I'm going to really age myself right now. It's not Walter Cronkite or Dan Rather interviewing somebody. It's not Kim Kardashian. I think
No.
I don't even, it's you, it's me. Now, I'm famous in my own head, but And my cats
I'd,
think I'm famous. But
I'd rather be a leader in my field
yeah,
than be famous. I want to go to the grocery store without
I
people
know.
looking at me,
Yeah.
but I do want to be a leader in my
Hmm.
industry. And I
Right.
think that is
Hmm.
absolutely a great goal.
Right. Right.
Um,
And whether it's, that
yeah.
you're the leader of everything or just in your community or whatever it is, you have a message that people want and need to hear. And I think that's the thing that we really want people to remember.
Yes. And the last little thing, and I didn't realize this was a thing, but if you can't recognize your own topics, values, what people want to hear from you, change your name and get a piece of paper and write it down. So instead of saying like Kelly Glover was an
Hmm.
entertainment reporter, went to
Hmm.
Miramax as the tour guide, lost track of, change the name to Debbie. Oh,
Hmm.
that's your name. I've just looked up at the screen. To Anna,
Hmm.
whatever the name is, and be
Hmm.
like, Anna,
Hmm.
18 years in media,
Hmm.
won a podcast award. And when you change the name and look at it, if you met that person, you would think they're amazing.
Right.
So sometimes just that exercise of
Hmm.
getting it away from yourself, you would think
Cool.
that they were the best person, but that's
Cool.
actually you and you are
Hmm.
amazing.
Right.
So just
Right.
use that little exercise to change the name, put it down, and that will help you distance yourself from yourself
Hmm.
and recognize what your value is, what your talking points is, what you've achieved, and where you actually sit.
Perfect.
Because if you met yourself and it wasn't you, you would think that you were pretty fabulous.
Right. And you are. I mean, that's the thing to remember is we are all fabulous and we have great messages and information that we need to share with people.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having an absolutely fascinating, delightful time talking with Kelly Glover of the Talent Squad. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.